Hello, everyone. It's a little after 11, and I want to get started. So keep getting food, stay in line, and just listen to me with half of your attention, if possible. So my name's Chris Hall. I'm the program manager for the Interprofessional Education Collaborative, and we are always delighted to help collaborate with occupational therapy to bring Dr. Nafai here to talk to you. I just want to welcome you if you're new to campus. The OTs, right? This is your first semester. How's it going? Do we have any other professions represented today? Any PT, nursing, social work? I know there's a couple of social work students here. Typically, for IPEC events, we have a really robust mix of students, and I hope that you'll plan to attend our events in the fall and in the spring, which usually are Wednesdays from 12 to 1:30. Sometimes they're here. We used to always have events in Aledke Auditorium, but now we're in Innovation Hall most of the time, which is a little more spacious, a little less quaint, for what that's worth. So, on your chairs, you have these attendance sheets. We will be accepting them in the baskets at the exits an hour into the discussion, if not at the end. And these are becoming the attendance of record. If you're interested in getting an honors distinction, this event can count toward your honors distinction. And we take your suggestions on the back very seriously when we try to improve events. So please take a moment to fill those out. Watch for our calendar. It will be a poster that will be posted around campus, and we have events almost every Wednesday in the fall and the spring. A lot of them deal with cultural competency, as this one does. We're focusing on Indigenous peoples at the beginning of the semester. We have an event on human trafficking, and we'll be addressing substance use disorder throughout the semester, so watch for those if you're interested in those topics. I'll introduce Chris Winston now, your OT program director, and she will introduce our speaker. Thanks for being here.
Okay, I think you can see me behind this podium. Some you can't. So welcome, everybody. I want to thank Dr. Kate Lucas for organizing this event, along with other faculty in OT and the folks in IPEC for their support. Where did Chris go? There, for the event as well. We're really pleased to welcome Dr. Saeed Nafai back to UNE. I first had the great opportunity to meet Dr. Nafai through an introduction from Dr. Lucas upon starting my work here at UNE a few years ago, and then had the great pleasure of being able to travel to Morocco last January and to actually work with Dr. Nafai in the first ever Occupational Therapy Conference in Morocco, which is very exciting, which we're very excited to repeat this coming January. So he's been a long-term collaborator and friend of UNE OT, and he's the founder of OT in Morocco and the current president of the OT Association of Morocco. Dr. Nafai is a faculty member at the American International College with a clinical background in rehab, disability, and participation. He's a strong advocate for lymphedema treatment, for human rights, and for occupational therapy across borders. Dr. Nafai is one of the busiest OTs I have the pleasure of knowing, as he is also president of Global Impacts, an organization promoting cultural competence through service-based travel. When he's not busy assuming all these roles, he's dedicated to advancing goodwill through global diplomacy and worldwide occupational justice. So students, faculty, staff, and members of the community, we are very fortunate to have a master teacher and all-round outstanding individual with us today. Dr. Nafai will guide us in exploring cultural effectiveness, human compassion, and global service diplomacy. So please join me in giving a hearty Maine welcome to Dr. Saeed Nafai.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Winston, for the warm welcome. Thank you, Dr. Lucas, for the invitation again, and the IPEC committee for your trust for inviting me for the 4th time in a row. And I am honored to be here. UNE plays a big part in my heart. I have been coming to UNE often, and in 2014 I had the pleasure and honor to teach at the campus of UNE in Morocco, Tangier. Then my daughter, who was 12 years old, she went with me, and she's here with me today. She's touring UNE. She wants to become an OT as well. So our talk today will be about consideration in working with Muslims, either as a patient or as a client or as a team or a colleague or a team member. So these are some of the objectives that I will be discussing. So first, increase your awareness about or sensitivity and appreciation of Islamic culture, and build cultural fluidity, humility, and dispel any stereotype in working with Muslims in general, and then increase knowledge of daily routine, habits, rituals, and roles of Muslim people. And this also mainly related to the OTPF, the Occupational Therapy Practice Framework, where we're gonna be looking into details of it. And also understanding the variation of values and rituals within the Islamic culture, and relate how daily occupations and occupational therapy will meet the cultural needs of a Muslim patient or interprofessional practitioner. All right, but first, you're gonna ask me questions at the end. I'm gonna ask you a question now, okay? And there is prizes, so, but no cheating. Don't look at your cell phone, okay? So the first one, how many Muslims worldwide? If you get closer to the number, you get a prize. Almost? All right, you are the winner, 1.7 billion. Is a prize for you? All right, so the second question. So what is the background of the largest Muslim immigration population in the state of Maine, your state? Somali, yeah? Another prize. Correct. This is a Moroccan tagine. And so I do speak Arabic and Somali language, okay? So what Muslim country does UNE have its third campus? That was an easy question. Best answer. So what is the name of the holy book of Muslims? I said it first. So what is the first country to recognize the independence of the United States of America? Who said that? All right, definitely. And that was in 1777, so 1 year after the independence. There's one more question. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, something there?
Yeah, try that again.
All right, Morocco. So the first documented university in the world was built in Fez, Morocco, in year 1859. And who built it? A man or a woman? So a Muslim woman built the first university in the world. And I will relate to that why I included this question as well. All right, So some of you may be asking, what is Islam? All right. So Islam is part of the monotheistic faith, Judaism and Christianity, and it was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, over 1,400 years ago. All right. And a person who follows Islam, we call them a Muslim, not a Muslim, a Muslim. Okay. And the word of God in Arabic, it's Allah. All right. So we have Christians or Jews. For example, we have Jewish population in Morocco, and they called God Allah. So it's not like it's just like some whatever word it's in will be translated. It's just the same thing. God, the word in Arabic means Allah. So Christians in some majority Muslim countries like in Lebanon or in Egypt, they also say the word Allah in Arabic for God, right? And Islam holy book is the Quran. Sometimes can be spelled like Qur'an or Quran, so different. And Prophet Muhammad is considered to be the final prophet. And also Muslims believe in all prophets. So Muslims believe in Jesus, believe in Moses, believes in David, believe in Noah, believe in Jacob. So all the prophets before that, they believe in them. But what we believe is that Muhammad is also a prophet and he's the last prophet. So two major holidays in Islam. It's Eid al-Fitr, which is just we celebrated 2 days ago. It's after the end of Ramadan. And then another one will be in, I believe, August 11th. And the reason why I say I believe, because we rely on a lunar calendar. And so usually we based on the month when it comes, like in Ramadan, sometimes you might not know until the night before. You may know it's going to be maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, but you cannot be definite it's going to be Wednesday based on the lunar calendar. Okay, so where do Muslims live or exist? So there are 10 countries with the largest Muslim population. And this is statistic from the Pew Research from 2010. And also there's some projection for until 2050. So if you see here, right now the world total population of Muslims is 1.7 billion, almost 1.8 billion. And Indonesia, which is a country that does not speak Arabic, because this is a stereotype that people believe that all Muslims are Arabs and all Arabs are Muslims. It's not. Okay, so there are some Muslims who are not Arab, majority of Muslims are not Arabs, and there are some Arabs who are Christian or Jewish. Okay, and so Indonesia, the largest Muslim population, 220 million, and then India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. I don't know if you can see the numbers, but there's India now, 194 million people. In Pakistan, 184 million. And then Bangladesh, 144, all right? But that may change a little bit in the projection of 2050. So India will be 333 million, will be the surpass Indonesia. And Pakistan will be almost 300 million. And then Nigeria, almost 300 million. Indonesia, and so forth. So, but the point I'm trying to look is almost going to be 3 billion people of Muslims in the world. So Islam has some pillars that Muslims believe in. All right. So number one is the declaration of faith, that the person declare that they are a Muslim and they believe in the oneness of God. And so also praying 5 times a day. So the early one is like early dawn. Like right now, it's about 3:30 a.m. All right, and giving money to charity, which is 2% of whatever your wealth you have, you give it to charity, to the poor, of course. And then fasting Ramadan, we just finished 2 days ago. and then pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in someone's life, if you have the ability to do so. All right? And also there's pillars of faith, which is, again, believe in Allah as the one and the only God, without associating any other partners or gods with him. And belief in angels, believing in the holy books, including Torah, the Bible, and other holy the scriptures. And also believing in the entire prophet that God sent to mankind. And also believing in the day of judgment, that there is one day people will be judged of what they did in this life. And also believe in predestination. So Islam is not new to America. So some people may think so, but Islam is not new to America. President Obama in 2009 in Egypt mentioned that Islam is part of America. And the first country, actually, as I just mentioned, was a Muslim country to recognize the independence of the United States, okay? And also, Muslims in America date back to the 15th century with the arrival of African Muslims and also slave and Spanish Muslim explorer. In the early 1900s, immigrants from the Middle East, especially Lebanon, Syria, start to move here. And they call this land America. Right? So America, we call it America. Let's say together, America. And so amongst them, actually a Moroccan guy, not far from the city where I live, about 40 kilometers, about 20 something miles. His name is Mustafa Zmouri, and actually he was known by this name Estevanico, and he was employed by Spain. He actually considered the discoverer of New Mexico. All right? There's a long story about what's happened. They were coming in a ship, and the ship got destroyed. Only 4 people survived, and he was one of the 4 people, and he gets befriended. There's a long story. Gets become friends with some Native Americans, and he end up in New Mexico, and it just, and like one time I was looking at the houses in New Mexico in one of the documentaries. I was like, oh my God, that looks like Morocco. So I don't know what it has to do with it or not, but it was just like a coincidence that I was looking into it. All right, so I will just play this video like for the first 2 or 3 minutes, just to have an idea about Muslims in America currently.
At the Pew Research Center is to understand the role of religion in American public life. And that means, in addition to understanding the views of the largest religious groups in the population, we also need to be able to understand the views and the experiences of smaller religious groups as well, including Muslims.
The U.S. public just doesn't know very much about Muslims. It turns out only about half of the U.S. public says they know a Muslim personally. And of those that do, they only know a handful. And so understanding the complexity and the diversity within the U.S. Muslim community is hard.
It's a very complicated, complex story. I mean, for most Muslims, by and large, right, they're very proud to be American. They see themselves as part of their society, and on average, they're doing well. Yet the perception of discrimination and the experience of discrimination are both on the rise. And the worry is that will begin to hold the Muslim American community back.
Muslims in the United States are a fairly small group. They account for about 1% of the overall U.S. population. But they're a very important group, and they're a group that's growing quite rapidly. So what we wanted to do with this survey was to be able to paint a full portrait of Muslims in the United States today. Most Muslims tell us that they are happy, that they're satisfied with the way things are going in their own lives. And most Muslims tell us that they believe in the American dream, that people who work hard can get ahead in the United States if they so choose.
Muslims are actually more likely than the public overall to believe that if you work hard in this country, you can get ahead.
So our conditions forced us to come to the United States, but we chose to be United States citizens because of the American dream, the American principles, and the American values. We knew that America is not perfect, but we saw the potentials in it, and so we decided to take the oath and become United States citizens. The opportunities are there. It's going to be hard, and of course, it's going to be harder for some to obtain that dream than others.
Is the land of the free because of those who were brave enough to fight for that freedom in our country. And I consider this is my country too. It's not my mother country, but there is a saying, your country is not where your grandfather is buried. Your country is where your grandchildren are being raised. The American dream applies to anyone from any religion, in my opinion. But for me particularly, as a Muslim, this is the push behind all the obstacles that I faced. That if you study, if you work hard in this country, you will make it. You will be somebody.
My family wasn't a very rich family. We didn't have private education. We went through the public school systems in the state colleges and whatnot. And I had to pay my way through college.
So there was just like an introduction of Muslims in America. It's a long video. I would recommend if you get a time or a chance to watch it. It's very kind of in details about the Muslim population in the U.S. But this is the largest Gallup research that's happened here in the USA for Muslims. And you can see, for example, the Muslim population, it comes from all sorts of kind of background. So there is 28% are white, Hispanic, 35%, 18% are Asian, and 18% are others. Compared to, for example, Protestant or Catholics, 88%, 76%, and so forth. All right. So in America or all over the world, Islam is considered to be the fastest growing religion, and right now, likely to work with the Muslim in the future will increase because this is, one of the data that showed they are an increase in population. So the estimated change in population 2010 to 2050, so 73%, which is the highest than any other religious group. And also here, it will be the second largest religious group in the USA by 2040. So in Maine, in your state, the first group of Muslims came from Albania, and they were like recruited by some textile company in the 19th century. So there is also claim that their mosque in Bedford was the first one established in the USA. The community of the Albanian Muslims was mostly wiped out by the Spanish influenza epidemic in the 1918, unfortunately. And also there is about 6,000 Muslims in Maine. Majority of them are refugees from Somalia, Sudan, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And there are also 8 mosques in Maine, 4 in Portland, 2 in Lewiston, and then 1 in Augusta and 1 in Orano. So you can visit a mosque. Some people, for a school assignment, you want to learn more about the religion, or just as a curiosity, you can call and then visit a mosque. They'll give you a tour. They are always welcoming. Sometimes there's some interfaith where, like, for example, in our mosque in Worcester, we have people like a Christian priest and rabbi and the imam, which is the head of the religious affair in the mosque, and then they do some interfaith. And also, actually, my daughter who's here, she was part of a group that's called Daughters of Abraham, Prophet Abraham. So they were like girls from Christian faith, Jewish faith, and Muslim faith, and they were doing some activities to benefit the community. So in America, 20% of American Muslims are converts. This is my lovely wife, Elizabeth. She converted to Islam in 2001. And this is the funeral of Muhammad Ali, the boxer who passed away about 2 years ago, I think, who also was a convert to Islam here in America. So how do mainstream view Islam? So in 1999, the previous Pope, John Paul II, kiss the Quran as the sign of respect of the Islamic religion. And also he came also to Morocco, and it was a good relationship between the head of the Vatican, and and I will talk about some other stereotype and things that happen that can create some issues. So facts to know, as I mentioned earlier, all Arabs are not Muslims. All Arabs are not all Muslims, and all Muslims are not Arabs. And in America, which is kind of a sticky issue, but I would like to discuss here because sometimes we kind of get some backlash against Muslims or even against some people who look Muslims, because of thinking that they have to do with some terrorist act that's happened here in the USA. So if you look at the FBI data, the majority of terror attacks in the USA are done by non-Muslims. Okay, there is a small number. However, if it happens, then there is more media attention to it compared to the others. Okay, so also the worldwide Muslims are actually the biggest victims to terrorist attack and other war are Muslims. So in Iraq, for example, or in Syria, or in other countries, people are who the majority of, or in Afghanistan, so the Muslims are the majority of victims, including by some people like ISIS, who like some people here think that has to do with Islam, which has nothing to do with Islam because they are even actually their biggest victims are Muslims. So Muslims in the US fear, for example, hate crimes like discrimination. So if you are working with somebody, or like you're treating a child, or working with a family member, of a child with disability, so think about these things that they may be going through. All right. So discrimination, hate speech, physical assault, like it's happened almost. If you just check the internet, there are women who have been like this headscarf ripped out of their head, pushed, get beaten, just because they look Muslims. And also PTSD. Some people, they came from war-torn countries, and they brought all these things with them. So they still, some of them I met personally, lost their entire family. And then, so they still think about, some of them actually came with some injuries that remind them of what's happened. We have a child from Syria who lost his both arms and lost half of his family. So I was actually called by some team member in Children's Hospital in Boston to help with some things for him. So, and I saw how the child was going through, and he was like 9 years old, 10 years old, and it was just very difficult to see. And his father was here with him, but his parents were not with. Mom was not allowed to come here. So, but thank God now they are reunited. So, which is good for him, and the mother, of course. So, the assumption that I am one of them or one of the few that commit acts of terrorism against America is always in the background of somebody's with this faith. Like if something happens, sometimes the first thing we ask, "Oh God, I hope he's not a Muslim." So, because we know what's going to happen to us. So this is a Mina story. So Mina is a 9-year-old girl who was named after her great-great-grandmother, who actually, the state park in New York, it's called Mina Anthony Common Center in New York State, was named after her great-grandmother. She's also the 7th cousin removed descendant of Susan B. Anthony. And she was told by one of her classmates that during the election, that the president, if he wins, he's going to send you back to your home. But this is her home. All right? So that's what sometimes with children, because this is a thing that Donald Trump ran in his election, that he will be barring Muslims from entering this country. And so children hear things and they say it. And also children hear it back and they get scared. So that girl actually is my daughter, Mina. And she handed me this, if you look here, November 8, 2016. And so she was scared that night during the election because thinking, so around 8 p.m. she handed me this, thinking that, oh God, if something happened, I will be, I don't want to leave, and she's crying all night. So this is what I think, the reason why I brought this is very difficult to talk about actually, but this is what some of the children you may be working with, or some family member you will be working with, all right? And this is, again, because of the faith or because of whatever is going on in this country these days. So some of the Muslims can be victims regardless of they didn't do anything, okay? So just May 13, I believe, yes, May 13. So there was a nice mosque in Connecticut intentionally set on fire. And just because, All right. So now, we talked about the religion. Now we're going to talk about the culture, okay? So Islam as a religion also can have different countries that share some of their cultures, but also have different cultural background, okay? So we're talking about 1.7 billion Muslim. Some, they have their own language, they have their own background, they have their own norms. And so what Islam is one thing. It has the thing we mentioned before, the 5 pillars of Islam and the faith, okay? Now we get mixed, some people mix the culture with the religion, okay? Remember the question I asked you before, what was the first university who built it? It was a woman. So some countries who are Muslim countries now are not allowing women to go to school. This is their culture. That has nothing to do with the religion, okay? So this is, I just want to clarify that so then people cannot mix things up between the culture and the religion, okay? And plus, I'm just going to go back. There is 2 main sects in Islam, Sunni, which is about 90% of the Muslims in the world, and then, or over that. And then there is Shiite, which is the main country of Shiite sect are Iran and some parts of Lebanon. So, in Islamic culture and also tradition, we respect elders, okay? So if you work with older adults, so you might find that the family are doing everything for their loved ones, which sometimes can be against what we want them to achieve as occupational therapists or physical therapists or social worker or any other healthcare professions. So for example, you may have an older adult who just suffered a stroke, a CVA, and we are trying to get them feel, be more independent, able to feed themselves, do their own hygiene, but some family member believe that it's my responsibility to take care of my parents. So I will feed them, I will wash them, I will dress them. And so I will encourage you to challenge them a little bit and say, you know what, I totally understand that, but your father should be able to do also things for themselves to get better. So you have to bring the word that they're going to get healthier. So it's going to make sense for them, that they are going to be more, their brain and their body will be function better if they are doing things for themselves, okay? So then contractions is not going to kick in, the pain, the stiffness, all the brain is not going to be function the way it's used to be because they are now a passive person, everything is done for them. The same thing actually I would say for children. So I have these challenges in Morocco as well. When we go volunteer in Morocco with some colleagues or with my students, we visit some orphanages or some family members who have children with autism or with disability, and then we find the mom, the child is 12 years old, sitting next to her, his hands are actually strong, but she still feed him. It's the same thing again. She believes that it's my responsibility to take care of my child. But again, when we explain things to the mom or the father, mainly the mothers, then they can, like the majority of them, they understand, and then they let the child do their, be more kind of independent or more participative in their own care. The handshaking. So there are some people in some Muslim countries that men, just like the Orthodox Jewish population, so they may not shake your hand if with the opposite sex, okay? A woman may not shake the man's hand, or a man may not shake a woman's hand. And so always take your cue. So I always I can step back a little bit and see if they put their hand forward, and then I shake. I personally shake hand, but I'm just telling you that there are some who don't. So follow their cue. And then eye contact. So there is some even come to the point that they may not even have an eye contact. And we know in healthcare, eye contact is very important in any kind of communication. But there is some conservative man or woman in Islam that they may not, so my wife, she called it the chin look. They're looking at your chin or your shoulder. So that just because they are kind of very conservative and they do not want to have that eye contact. And then in some medical or some, especially for ADL or stuff that involve any physical contact, some, may consider or want only the same sex to be their caregiver, okay? And this is similar to other people that I personally work with as an occupational therapist. I had some people from some European, Eastern background, or from Turkey, or from other, that some of them may not even be Muslim as well, but they want a female. They don't want me as a male. Or vice versa, sometimes a male, they may say, I want a male, I don't want a female therapist or a nurse or whatever. So Muslims do not bow. They believe they can bow only to God. And so this is a part of the tradition. So in Islam, so the hijab with headscarf encourages Muslims to dress modestly. And so Muslim women from diverse background observe modesty in their own way. So some people say, hijab is part of me and I have to wear it. And some believe, which is that's their choice, that is how they view their faith, then this is also their choice. So we don't judge people. All right? So there are some Muslim women very successful in Morocco, and they are wearing headscarf all the time. And also the same thing, there are some Muslim women who are very successful and they choose not to wear headscarf. And so in some countries, wearing hijab is obligatory. Even some women don't want to, but they have to. For example, in Iran or in Saudi Arabia. So some, and then they leave the country, they take it off. So don't be surprised. One of my friends flew from Saudi Arabia, and he said, it was actually from England, but he said it was so funny. He said women go inside the airplane bathroom, were covered, and then they come out like all dressed, and their hair is showing, and their makeup, and it's like, where is the other woman who just got in? So this is, again, it's a choice for some women. Yeah. Is there an age that they have to start wearing that? It's puberty. Yeah, same thing for fasting. Again, some people, this is again another stereotype, they may consider hijab is a form of oppression. Okay, it's one actually of the lady I met, she came one time to our mosque, and she's actually the sister-in-law of Tony Blair, the previous Prime Minister of Britain, of England, and then she was a famous journalist, and she did some work in Palestine, and she converted to Islam, and she chose to wear the headscarf. She was not a Muslim before, so same thing as my wife. again, she chooses to wear her scarf. It's not like a form of oppression, as some people believe. So again, if you work in a hospital or in a nursing home or in a some of you maybe a side job, maybe in a restaurant, so you may hear the word halal. So this is for meals, and this is kind of like similar to what the Jewish population called kosher. And so, and pork, it's forbidden in Islam, and alcohol is forbidden in Islam. So, but if related to some medical thing, it's permissible, but it's discouraged. So if, let's say, there's some sutures that are made with some kind of pork products, of course, you're going to use it, okay? Because it's going to save somebody's life. It's not going to, oh, no, it's made for pork, we're not going to do it. So if you walk to a bathroom and you see somebody putting their foot in a sink, then washing their feet, they must be maybe having a Muslim faith, and they are washing their feet, part of what we call wudu or ablution. So this is a ritual that must be done before the prayer, all right? And if a person unable to wash, let's say they have a wound or they are sick or they're traveling, there is no water, then there is something what we call tayammum, where they can be rubbing their hand for a stone as a kind of replacement for alternative for the water, all right? So if you go to a patient's room, this is a funny story happening in one of the spinal cord injury clinic in Switzerland. I visited last March, and she told me in December, and the guy who's a nurse there, he said there was a guy from Libya, background from Libya, and each time the nurse came, she found a big, like kind of like a little rock next to his head, and she was afraid he's going to hit her with it. And so, but the person is using it only for tayammum. So when you go to maybe a patient's room in the hospital and you find a little rock next to their head, most likely they are using it for this, okay? So they're not going to hit you with it. The prayer, so people pray 5 times a day. In Arabic, it's called salat, all right? So again, if you have a patient who is using a wheelchair or maybe they're bedridden in the bed, and maybe you'll go to the room and you find them mumbling, they're not hallucinating. They are praying, most likely, all right? So especially if it was like some kind of organized movement, okay? So a person may be bowing to the ground if they are healthy, but if they are not, then they can pray even in bed or even in a chair, a wheelchair, like you see in the picture there. And as I mentioned earlier about the fasting in Ramadan, it changes the time of prayer because it's based on the lunar calendar and the sun. Okay, so the early prayer can maybe as of 3:30 a.m. in the summer, but in the winter, maybe as like at 6:30 a.m. So it changes because it's early dawn. So off note, as I mentioned, a Muslim who is sick can pray in various positions. So if you have some of your patients, I mentioned, also take this to consideration. And so they may not speak to you. So if you go to somebody's room and they are engaged in the prayer, when you talk to them, they might not answer you, okay? So they're not being rude or something, but you will kind of like see that, I don't know, I told that story last time. One time I was in the library of Queen Sigmund Community College where I had my quota, associate degree for the OT assistant program. And I was in between the shelves of the books praying, and I'm engaged in one of the movements like this. And the lady who works there, she thought I am like looking for a book. And she came, she said, "Can I help you look for a book?" And I didn't answer her, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." She kept walking back. So she kind of like, I didn't answer her. She knows I was praying. So it was funny, like I kind of like laughed a little bit. But again, the prayer, it takes about like 10 minutes. So it does not take like a lot of time. So 10 to 15 minutes for each one, 5 of them. So some of you may be doing home care, either for pediatric or for adults or older adults. So it's one of the things is removing shoes is considered to be like a good thing to do because we pray inside the home and the home should be cleaned. All right. If you are visiting friend, do not bring alcohol as a gift. Right? Some people might think, this is also, it happened to me, some people alcohol, so I had to ask them to leave it outside. And also some, the shoes, or even like if you have a dog, so some Muslims will not allow a dog inside the house because their saliva considered to be dirty, but cats are okay. But again, some scholars like animal therapy are okay because it's kind of much needed for that person. So Friday, it's kind of our holy day, like Jewish population Saturday, Christian is Sunday, Muslims are Friday. So the sermon, it's happened at noon, usually between 12 and 2. So if you work with some Muslim and you see them disappearing between 12 and 2, so most likely they went to the mosque to pray. So the holidays that I mentioned earlier, 2 of them, it's this year happened June 5th, and the second one will be August 11th. So the way to greet somebody for Eid is you say Eid Mubarak, and don't take it personally. I think I'm going to address this in the next slide. On the pad. All right. So, but you know how like in Christmas, maybe you may accidentally somebody, a Muslim, you say them happy Christmas or whatever. They may not answer you because they don't believe in Christmas. All right. So you may give them a gift. They may not return the gift because they don't believe in Christmas. Okay. Don't take it personally. The same as you might not know how to know about their Eid or about. So this is also some Muslims may feel uncomfortable when they are doing the gift swap during Christmas. It's just because they don't believe in it. But some they do. Just make sure you are know exactly your coworker or your patients or whatever. So the fasting in Ramadan, again, so make sure that if you're a patient, usually they are not allowed to fast if they are very sick, okay? So if they are sick, they're not allowed to fast. They're not supposed to fast. And if they are also children, they're not supposed to fast until they reach puberty. But if they fast, usually it's involving no food and no drink. So if you're working with somebody, maybe as an outpatient, or if they are exhausted and tired during the month of Ramadan, so just because they have not eaten or drinks maybe for 16 hours, even water, no water, all right? But this is actually important to, there are some Muslims, even some people I know personally, who take this very seriously, and even if they have diabetes, they fast what they are not supposed to. Okay, especially if they are taking insulin, right? So some of them, they may see that they are sick and the doctors told them not to fast, but they are fasting, which is actually harmful because now it's against the religion. Because God gave you the permission to eat and you're not eating, so if you die, so some scholars are said, Muslim scholars are like you if you commit a suicide, because you're not supposed to fast. So it can be kind of like against the teaching of Islam. Also, older people are not supposed to fast, okay, if they are very frail and old, okay? So in some body language, so for example, if you sit and so pointing a shoe towards somebody or throwing a shoe near somebody, touching their body, must be also disrespectful, all right? And I can maybe at the end show you a small video about an incident happened between, I think I showed this last time, but between President Obama and President Erdogan of Turkey, who is a Muslim, right? So just some body language, it's very interesting to see how an act and a movement that President Obama did not kind of like know that he's doing it, and then he, we don't need the voice, just the, all right. So what I want you to pay attention is to President Obama crossing his leg. So the moment he put his shoe against, so he moved, and then he gave him the shoe back. You see that? All right. So it's like, you know what? You disrespect me, I'm going to disrespect you. All right? All right. So yeah, like just body language, you're not supposed to point. So the biggest insult you can do somebody is hitting them with a shoe. All right? So some few, not the majority of Muslims, so they may consider drawing, especially faces and stuff, it's something only God are supposed to do, so like some human being, and it has life. So there are some, they may, if you're doing an activity with a child, for example, drawing, or with an older adult who has maybe had a stroke and you want to do some, like there's some even some assessment tool that's involving drawing a flower or so they may consider this also something that they may not believe in, okay? So just want to bring this to your attention as well. And so the reason why also maybe making this kind of sculpture, okay, because these are considered also like in early Islam, they were discouraged from being in people's home because people were worshiping idols, you know, like sculptures of different gods. So, as I mentioned earlier about Islam and also the cultures can be totally two different things. So, and there's some misconception that, for example, Islam does not allow women to go to school or education, which is, again, as I mentioned, it's not true. In fact, Prophet Muhammad said, you know, seek education even in China, which was way far, then considered like the farthest place. And also, he actually works for his wife. His wife used to be his boss. So there's some cultures in some Muslim countries, they believe also women should not work, okay? But in fact, Prophet Muhammad was working for his wife, so his wife was his boss, technically. And also some female kind of genital mutilation. So again, it has nothing to do with the Islam faith, but it's culture, especially like in some sub-Sahara in Africa. And also the honor killing. Let's say a woman was raped by a man, and then they may go and kill her because she was raped. And then, and so that this, again, has nothing to do with Islam. And like for abortion, so for example, abortion is considered okay to save women's life, so according to Islamic tradition. And restriction driving, so just actually last year was okay in Saudi Arabia, but before it was forbidden for a woman to drive, all right? So again, this is based on the culture. It's nothing in the Quran or the teaching of Prophet Muhammad said women should not drive, all right? So Muslims and illness. So during illness, Muslims are expected to seek God's help. So again, as in the occupational therapy practice framework, there is talk about spirituality. So people maybe listening more to the Quran, they may be praying more, they may be mentioning the word of God more, and also you may see people visiting them a lot, okay? One of the things is maybe if the visitors are causing the person to be more sick, which is kind of understandable. So sometimes I work with some people with some Muslim faith that have like terminal cancer, and then the rooms are full every hour or two. So it's okay to maybe mention to the visitors, that person is very ill, they need some rest. Okay, we understand that you have a good intention, but it's not good for them to be visiting that much. And usually the family member, we had to write a sign and we limit visit to 5 minutes and maybe only like 2 people in a time. And maybe by 5 p.m. it's done, because some people come show up at 10 p.m. It's just, because this is the culture. So Muslims believe that dying is part of living. So you may be working with somebody who is terminally ill and they are smiling and happy and they're not worried, they just part because they believe that there is another life after this one. Blood transfusion is allowed in Islam, right? And abortion for the sake of the mother, as I mentioned, is allowed. And means maintaining a terminal patient and an artificial life support is discouraged in Islam. So again, we kind of like mentioned this about visiting ill people. So there is, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's some people may ask for the same sex therapist or doctor or nurse or whatever. So again, we all know this, whatever profession it is, we should always respect the person wish, okay, regarding their care. So one thing I will also recommend, always, if you have maybe seek some help from the mosque, the local mosque. Usually they have even trained doctors there, and they have the imam. And usually if there's something, they can also help, and they can be a big support for whatever that person is going through. So I think I mentioned this before about spirituality and occupational therapy practice framework. So OT practitioners are encouraged to identify their clients' daily spiritual routine that allow a sense of connectedness to something larger than oneself, or that are especially meaningful in their life, according to the OTA. And so the centennial vision, which is include our professional goals as to be globally connected and diverse workforce. So it's kind of similar to what we are discussing here. So this goal should include sensitivity to the religious and spiritual ritual of the future of our profession. So this is kind of like do and don't. So in either clients or Muslims, coworkers, so like do not interrupt speak, as I mentioned before, if you were praying. Workplace prayer usually lasts 7-10 minutes, and maybe like max 5 to 10 minutes if needed for the ablution. So it is more respectful to refrain from distraction. Like if you are praying in an office, so maybe if you are playing the music, maybe stop it, maybe do not walk in front of them, which is can be a distraction. So a Muslim coworker is uncomfortable with after our pub night, kind of discussions, socialization and bars. So some of them may not even want to talk about that. So a Muslim coworker may come out to eat at a restaurant with the work crowd, and then maybe they want to sit not where something alcohol is involved. Right? There are some people who sit with you with the Muslim faith, but some they may not sit where there's an alcohol is involved. Not even drinking it, but just be in the table where they are eating. So a Muslim coworker may feel awkward during the holiday season and not return your Christmas kind of greeting or gift, as I mentioned earlier. So a Muslim differ in the celebration of birthday. So some Muslims celebrate birthday, some don't. So just like, some, it's like, their birthday and they're not, they don't care. But they may buy a gift for their mom. They may call their mom. They may, because they say, well, I didn't do anything. She did the work. I was just born that day. So this is what some people believe. So if you are unsure, sometimes not sure, just ask. So no to observer of any religious faith. So some of you are married, your mother-in-law and your mom does totally different thing in Thanksgiving or Christmas party, or religious things. So it's no religious kind of two people do same thing the same way. So everyone appreciate attention. So the way forward in cultural sensitivity and humility is to open a dialogue, have a mutual respect, discussion, and way to support one another. All right, so this is a kind of a small presentation we did at the AOTA about some students who are doing their field work as Muslim students, level 2 field work. And so kind of some of the things that they were discussing, for example, and one of them was actually from Saudi Arabia. She was very conservative. And so she felt uncomfortable even touching the man's hand while doing hand therapy. So she was using gloves. Right? So this is, again, is some of the things that you may be kind of seeing for some people. Male, female, for, especially for soft tissue massage. They may feel awkward for if it's a male and female. An outpatient, like even for family. The children may ask about headscarf, so you may have an answer why I'm wearing it. My wife, she gets asked this question all the time with children. So there is, people from all the other faith, there is more in common. So this is a interfaith event that I attended. This is an imam. This is a rabbi, and this is a priest. And so we had dinner together, and we talked, and so we share a lot in common than differences. And this is a funny joke. It's a reality, but a joke too. So the oldest human being was found in Morocco. So now we are all Moroccan, guys. All right, so this is resources. All right, so any question, I'll be happy to help. But I just have one thing I want to show you. So last year I attended WFOT Congress in Cape Town, South Africa. And the person there mentioned, one of the keynotes mentioned, to be an occupational therapist, you need to be an activist. So, and any other profession you have related to healthcare or education, you need to be advocating for your clients, for their loved one, what they are going through. So I am advocating at the Lymphedema Treatment Act. So how many people here have a family member has breast cancer or had a breast cancer or lymphedema or any type of cancer? Wow, look at that. So there's actually a bill in Congress. I had the pleasure to serve and the board member in the lymphedema advocacy group. And so we have this bill in Congress. We're not selling anything. We actually want to have insurance companies be able to cover compressions for women who had lymphedema as a result of cancer. So unfortunately, right now, it's not covered through insurance. So people end up with a lot of cellulitis, with more sickness and more infections, and just because it's not covered. So, so this is a bill that's introduced in Congress and in the Senate. It was introduced in February in the Senate and in the Congress in March. It's actually a bipartisan bill. Both Republican and Democrats support it. In fact, it's so this is how it started. Heather Ferguson, who is our founder, her son was born with lymphedema. So the people can get it also as a primary or secondary as a result of injury or surgery or cancer. So she managed through her advocacy to have North Carolina insurance companies under the law of North Carolina to cover lymphedema compressions. And she took this to Washington, and now she want to have the whole country to be able to do the same. And so through advocacy, I was fortunate enough to be able to, it's very easy actually to do, but it's very rewarding, okay? It's involving some work, but it does not need to. So this is my congressman. I grabbed one of my patients. I printed like a flyer, and I went to him, and I said, Congressman McGovern, I need you to sponsor this. And he did. And so it actually gets me the opportunity to present at Harvard University Medical School and be able to meet Kathy Bates. Well, how cool is that? So right now, we are #1 bill in Congress out of 469 bills. All right? So I'm coming to what I want you to do. So right now, we have in Maine, we have Senator King is actually one of the co-sponsors, but Susan Collins is not, and Congressman Golden and Congresswoman Pingree, it's not yet, okay? So and now you can use your cell phone or you can use your paper. So there is Senator Collins' information number. So you can call her and bother her, and she will sponsor it for us. So just say, you know what, I'm calling. If you go to our website, lymphedematreatmentact.org, there is what you should say and why it's needed. It's, 40% of cancer survivors experience lymphedema because of people are now living longer. So, and you can like have a, but usually you can also email her, right? And then the other information for the 2 congressmen and women. For more information, you can visit Lymphedema Treatment Act, and then you will have all the information that is needed. Thank you very much. I will be happy to take any questions.
Please raise your hand and wait for the mic, and then speak closely so everybody can hear.
Hi, my name's Christina. I was just wondering if you are working on any research projects right now at this moment.
Research projects?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Actually, we are working on a research project regarding accessibility to mosques in Morocco for people with disability. Believe it or not, there are some mosques, it costs $6-7 million, but no accessibility, so you'll find stairs and stuff. So we want to do it in a scientifically way to kind of prove that is something that should be ending and should be allowing people with disability to enter mosques and pray like everybody else instead of leaving their wheelchair outside and crawling inside. Right. So the second one, we are working on women with cancer regarding lymphedema in Morocco. And there is a lady in Morocco who created actually a shelter for women with cancer in Morocco. And so we kind of partner with her, and we're going to do some research study there. And we just finished a study, actually was published. It was given the green light to be published at the Work Journal about work-related injuries for nurses in Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
Thank you for the great presentation.
You're welcome.
Let me just introduce myself. My name is Hoida Arafat, and I am a professor in the College of Osteopathic Medicine. I graduated as an MD, and when I trained only on patients, right? I work now in the osteopathic, medical college, and what I'm noticing, we are trying to diversify our student population, and we have a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but a number of Muslim students, and mainly females. And they don't feel very comfortable with the osteopathic manipulation, right? And, for the purpose of their learning, they need to be able to practice and train on both males and females.
Yes.
However, we need to also accommodate their, and it's not just religion, and you understand that, it is mainly culture.
Culture, yeah, exactly.
Right? And I don't mind, for example, for a male doctor to examine me, but others would mind that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get to a point where I can, to get to like, just compromised, like solution for them and also for the learning. So what would you suggest for that? I'm talking to the dean, I'm talking to the course directors, and I'm trying also not to compromise the learning, right?
Yeah.
That's really a very important thing. So what would you suggest with that?
I think sometimes kind of talking to them also from the religious point of view as well, even though we talked about this culture, but saving life, working with people regardless of their sex, it's part of the oath of the medicine oath that you take or you took or you are going to take, but also it's humanity. Like if the person is not comfortable with, I would respect that. But for me, I, as an occupational therapist, I assisted women in shower, in transfer, in meal prep, in whatever. But the moment they don't want to, then I would respect that. But it's not up to me to say, like I will not say, she's a woman, I'm not going to assist her. So I think maybe bringing the point that you will be more given back to society or helping your society if you can address both genders.
Some of the students, like the female students, are required to be like wearing sports bras and exposing skin. They don't feel comfortable doing this in front of all their classmates. That's a little bit tricky because we have the same thing, like when we do at the kinesiology lab. Even some not Muslims, and they don't want to be showing their. Yeah, that's something else. But I was thinking about treating the patients. Maybe they're not choose men. Yeah, I think that's maybe where maybe you'll do female, and male. Yeah, this is what we did. Like maybe you can have female by themselves because women, they may be okay to show their hair or their body to some women, but not to men. But also you may find some women who don't want to even show their some that they consider like private parts, even like maybe to even women. So it's other women that are not Muslims. Any other question? Right behind you.
Thank you, Saeed. Last time you talked just a little bit, and I think it might be worth mentioning again, about not having family members interpret.
Yeah.
And your experience, and I think that sticks with people.
Yes. Yeah. So this is a good point. It was part of my PowerPoint. I don't know how I jumped at. When you are working with the family members with the parents or maybe the children of the older adults who are sick, try not to use them as an interpreter if it's related to some sensitive information, because they may not tell you they may feel uncomfortable. So I'll give you an example. I was with my mom, I'll say 10 years ago. My mom is born in 1953, so she's only 66. But 10 years ago, she was like, or 12 years ago, she was like 54 or something like that. And she was sick, and I took her to the doctor. And the doctor asked me that she still have her menses. And I said to the doctor, kill me, I will not ask her.
That's question, okay? Because this is, for me, I would never ask my mom that question, okay? So even though I work in the healthcare field and stuff, but it just, again, the culture, the tradition, the religion, it just all mixed up. And I was like, I'm not going to ask. This is so private for me. So that's why it's actually in most places, like I work in a rehab hospital in Worcester, and we're not, like, you're not supposed to use something, like, you should use professional interpreter. Right.
Hi, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
a great lecture.
You're welcome.
Sorry. I was wondering if you could talk more about how people might communicate like their preferences in these. Like, you're very open in saying these are things I'll do and these are things I won't do, but what about for your patient that doesn't? Like, how do you get that information from a patient who maybe not be as willing to share it?
Yeah. I mean, as occupational therapists, we always check the occupational profile of the person, and that's the point when you ask, are you comfortable with this? Are you comfortable with this? I will be your therapist, and are you comfortable with me being your therapist? And they will be, but again, we call some of you maybe still new to the field. It's something that you will be learning about. It's called therapeutic use of self. And so when you learn about how to communicate with people and use yourself as a therapeutic modality to talk to trust you, listen to you, and then you will be able to gain their trust. I had one time, more than one time, a lady, she adamantly refused, and then I said, you know what, it's okay, professionalism will be maintained while I'm working with you, but if you don't want to, I can get another one. And then just the way I talked to her, she said, you know what, I'm okay, that's okay, you can work with me. Even though in the beginning she said, no, I want a female. So I think if you show them that you are there to take care of them and to help them, most of the, maybe I have been, for 13 years now, or 14 years as an occupational therapist, and maybe 2 or 3 people, the female, they just said no, and I don't want to work with you. So most of them, they'll agree.
Is there anywhere we can access these PowerPoints?
I can send it to Dr. Lucas, and she can share it with you, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, you're welcome. And there is also a YouTube video from a previous presentation I did on YouTube. So if you can just Google my name and YouTube, and you'll see it there. And in fact, some schools are also showing to their students, and thank you for recording it. So it's on YouTube as well.
Hi, I'm Victoria.
Hi.
I understand, I barely found out not that long ago that you founded Occupational Therapy. Really, it hasn't been that long. How much of an impact do you feel you've made with the community, with all of Morocco?
Well, so my wife is an occupational therapist as well, and it's funny, she gets me to become an OT, and I get her to become an OT. So one time we got a brochure at home, it said, if you would like to help people, if you like to, so my wife, she read it, she's like, what is that, occupational therapy? She said, but it sounds good, go and study it. So I did, and I'm glad I did. So years later, I was going for my master's, and then she was proofreading my work, and she said, I like that stuff. And then she left teaching and became an OT. So we go back to Morocco since 2004, 2005, and help as much as we can. So as of 2017, we started OT in Morocco, but in 2016, I created the OT Association of Morocco. So right now we have students of occupational therapy, but we don't have practice yet. But as of next year, 2020, we will have our first graduate, and there are 20 of them, and they were able actually to attend our conference we did at UNA, and I'll be happy maybe if they can watch the video for it's only 1 minute. If you will tell So it's just about the conference that we had in Morocco about the first occupational therapy conference, and UNE students were there. And I will highly encourage you, if you ever get a chance to go to Morocco, please do. You will love it. I take my student there, and they say that in the 5 years they have been in school, the best thing happened to them is when they went to Morocco. So you're gonna love it. If you get a chance to go, please go.
Thanks.
Today we are hosting a groundbreaking conference which showcases our interest in international and interprofessional education, as well as our commitment to multiculturalism.
We are having our first National OT Association conference ever in the Kingdom of Morocco, and we are so lucky to have it done in this amazing place.
I'm an occupational therapist and an entrepreneur from Iceland. I'm Mariam Chifou. I am an occupational therapist working and living in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Sybille Zougaran. Je suis ergothérapeute à Toulouse.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. معكم الدكتورة سمية ملكاوي من الجامعة الأردنية.
My name is Hajar Hamadi. I'm a medical doctor from Morocco.
We learned a lot about how to work with disabled patients here in the conference, and I believe as a doctor, I face a lot of disabled patients. So I believe that we could use the help of OTs here in Morocco.
Morocco being a growing country in the field of health, we think we would benefit from having more OTs, because in our practices we still see a lot of people with disabilities that don't get the best and proper care, so they cannot live their life to the fullest.
The idea was to promote the profession of occupational therapy. We expect a lot of wonderful things to happen in this beautiful culture, in this beautiful place.
And I will also again thank UNE for giving me this opportunity here, and also the opportunity to host our conference in Morocco. And we will be hosting our second conference in January 4th, 2020. So, and you are all welcome.